Dear students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor P. Bhaskar Reddy, Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology, Sri Venkateswara University, Tirupati. In the present module of the paper Outlines of Indian History, we are going to study the beginning of European commerce in India. It is an important chapter to understand the history of modern India, since it is a beginning to understand the later course of history. It is known that the advent of Europeans in 16th and 17th centuries brought a new beginning in the history of India. The arrival of Portuguese, Dutch, English, French and some others, they brought some revolutionary change in the trade and commerce of India. The main purpose of their arrival to this part of Asia is to trade. The availability of spices, the demand of spices in the European countries, the enormous profits made therein in the spice trade, the fabulous wealth of India was an additional attraction for the direct arrival of European companies to India. However, with the arrival of several European companies, rivalry was begun for the domination over each other. Thus, the rivalry which began in this part of India, it resulted to bring many changes in the next course of history. The learning objectives of the present study are the advent of European companies like Portuguese, Dutch, English East India Company, French and others, then rivalry among the companies, and how the British emerged as a monopoly over the Indian trade. With these objectives, let us start our discussion on the advent of. However, before that start of the discussion, it is necessary to know about the trade conditions and India's relation with the Europe in the beginning, and what circumstances prompted the discovery of a direct sea routes to India and arrival companies. The India's trade relations with Europe go back to the ancient days of Greek. The trade between Europe and India was carried on along several routes. The most important feature of the overseas and overland trade was that the Asian part of the trade was carried on mostly by the Arab traders and sailors, while the European trade was monopolized by the Italians. The occupation of Constantinople by the Turks in the middle of 15th century, it brought certain startling changes. The old trade routes between East and West came under the control of the Turkish. Besides, the rise of the merchant class in Europe and the emergence of some European nations as maritime powers, direct trade relations began once again with India in the beginning of 16th century. This initiation was taken by Portugal and Spain in geographical exploration and discoveries. With this brief discussion, now let us start our discussion on the coming of Portuguese. Who are the Portuguese? When they started their innovations to make a direct link with India, what is the initial efforts and how the Portuguese established their trade centers and acquired their territories in India in the 16th century. The Portuguese were the first European nationals to come to India as traders. In this regard, the Prince Henry of Portugal, who was ruling in 1394 to 1460, known as Navigator, he inspired and encouraged Portuguese sailors to undertake voyages for the discovery of the sea route to India. To promote these discoveries, he set up a regular school for the training of seamen on scientific lines. After making several efforts, they reached a result-oriented exploration in the year 1494. In that year, the Columbus of Spain set out to reach India, but instead of India, he discovered America. In the end of the 15th century AD, the Portuguese sent a big voyage under the captaincy of Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama, as a representative of the King of Portugal, discovered a direct sea route from Europe to India via Cape of Good Hope. He reached the coast of Calicut in May 1498. This discovery of a direct sea route with India, it brought revolutionary change in the trading perspectives of the further course of history. When Vasco da Gama landed at Calicut, he got certain facilities for trade from the ruler of Calicut named Jamorin. The Vasco da Gama safely conducted the voyage and he collected so many commodities, and the first attempt was successful. Besides that, later on, his crew discovered spices in plenty, especially in Southeast Asian countries like Sumatra, Java, etc., in what were then known as Indian waters. Vasco da Gama, after the successful campaign of first voyage, he also attempted in 1503 another voyage. At that time, there was some trouble faced by the Portuguese because of the bad rumors spread by the Arabs, and also the local rulers also tried to threat. At that time, the Portuguese decided to convert the trade centers into fortresses garrisoned with their own men and money. Then the Portuguese also started the appointment of governor generals to govern over the positions of the Portuguese at their trade centers in the west coast. In the year 1505, Francisco de Almeida was appointed as the first Portuguese governor in India. He initiated a new policies for the Portuguese domination over the trade in Indian sea coast. His policy, enunciated by him, is known as the Blue Water Policy, which became familiar. After de Almeida, Alfonso de Albuquerque replaced as the governor in the year 1509. It is known that he captured Goa from the Sultan of Bijapur in the year 1510. Then Goa became the headquarters of the Portuguese settlements in India. Afterwards, he also conquered Malacca in the year 1511 in the Malay Peninsula. Thus, with the occupation of several trade centers in the west coast, he is considered as the real founder of the Portuguese power in India. His program to gain control of all the main maritime trade routes of east and to build permanent fortresses with settled populations laid the foundation of Portuguese hegemony in the Indian provinces. With his efforts and a later course, the Portuguese, by the end of 16th century, they captured vast stretches along the Indian coast. Even they extended their authority over the major part of Ceylon. Thus, the Portuguese dominated over the sea coast. They maintained a direct trade links with the new discovery, and really the 16th century is considered as the Portuguese Empire in India. But the Portuguese race in India had a short life, as the new rival trading communities from Europe posed a big challenge to them. Now, have a look at the establishment of Portuguese trade centers in the west coast and also east coast and Southeast Asian part of it. This itself shows that the Portuguese really created and dominated the coastal trade. When the Portuguese are making steady progress, in the same time, new arrivals came from the same Europe for the purpose of trade. They are Dutch. Now we may shift our discussion on the arrival of Dutch. Who are the Dutches? When they came? How they came? What is their problems and perspectives? And what are the the establishments in the coast which already possessed by the Portuguese. Regarding the coming of the Dutch had a long dealing in European products which they brought in Portugal and sold all over Europe. The Dutch revolt against the Spanish domination in their homeland known as Netherlands and merger of Portugal with Spain made them to look alternative sources to get spices. In spite of the strict vigilance of the Portuguese over the sea route they discovered, the Dutch dared to send their ships in 1595 to trade with India. Even in the end of the 16th century, as many as 15 voyages were attempted by the Holland between 1595 to 1601. However, the best effort is the publication of John Hagen van Lincoln, a Hollander on the Portuguese grip upon the East led to the formation of Dutch East India Company. In the perspective of the Dutch Company, in the year 1602, the Dutch East India Company was formed in an effort to establish profits in the spice trade and to form monopoly over it. The company was given the power to build forts, keep armies and make treaties. As a result, the first Dutch trading post was established in 1603 at Banten as a voyage to Indonesia. The main purpose of coming the Dutch not lay in India, but they concentrated on Southeast Asia where the spices were available like air and water. So that the early headquarters were in Ambon in Indonesia, which was established in between 1610 to 1619. Afterwards, the Dutchess not only established their center in the Southeast Asia, they also concentrated on the Indian coast, east and west, where already Portuguese were established their trade centers. In India, the Dutch successfully established their trade centers at Machilipatnam, Pulicat, Surat, Chinsura, Kasim Bazar, Patna, Balasore, Nagapatnam, Cochin and several others. With the establishment of these trade centers, in economic terms, they earned huge profit through business, monopolizing in black pepper and spices which they carried from Indonesia to European countries. The major Indian commodities traded by Dutch in India were cotton, indigo, silk, rice, opium and several others. With the coming of the Dutch, they eliminated the power of the Portuguese from the waters and successfully enjoyed monopoly in the 17th century, although the British and French tried to break it. Have a look at the Dutch trade routes, their trade centers in the Southeast Asian territories, East Coast and West Coast. When the Dutch established successfully their trade centers in the Southeast Asian territories, in Indian territories, though the Portuguese opposed them. In the meanwhile, while the two companies are going ahead, in the same time, in the beginnings of the 17th century, another new company also came from same land, Europe, for the purpose of trade. They are the coming of English. You know that coming of English, it marks some revolutionary changes in the existing trading conditions and rivalries among the companies. Regarding the coming of Englishes and trade progress, the success of the Portuguese, high profits earned in Eastern trade thrilled the English traders, where the Portuguese are earning profits more than 500 times by carrying these spices. So that with the inspiration of that, the English also started their attempts to send voyages and to make their inroads into this profitable trade of Asia. Their first attempt was in 1527 when Robert Thorney submitted a report to Henry VIII and facilitated the English to have passage to India. Later on, the Captain Drake's visit to East in 1575, his return via the Cape of Good Hope, and the defeat of Spanish Armada by the English in the year 1588 gave the required confidence and courage. Before the establishment of the English East India Company itself, one of the trader, John Mildenhall, a merchant adventurer, was the first Englishman who arrived in India in the year 1599 by the overland route. With this inspiration, in the year 1599, a group of English merchants called the Merchant Adventurers formed a company popularly known as the English East India Company. On December 31st, 1600, the company was authorized by a royal charter from the Queen Elizabeth to carry on exclusive trade in the East. Thus, from the beginning itself, the English East India Company was sponsored and authorized by the then British government. In the beginning, the company was interested in trade only. With these objectives, the English started their attempts and sending of voyages. Now we may proceed to discuss the progress of the English India Company voyages to India and Southeast Asian coast and their problems and perspectives. At first, the English East India Company tried its luck in the Spice Island of Indonesia. In the year 1601, the company organized its voyage under the command of James Lancaster and arrived at Fort of Achin, Indonesia. In that first voyage, they landed successfully in Achin, but the Dutch, who had already settled in the Spice Islands, did not present any opposition because the Englishes never tried to make their entry into directly the price producing areas. So that the Dutches, who are already established their station, they have not presented anything and they simply exchanged, and the first voyage of English was successful. The second voyage, also conducted by the English under the command of Henry Middleton, but in this, the Englishes who landed Southeast Asia with the same purpose, now they changed their policy and they tried to connect with the producing areas directly. In this instance, due to the strong resistance of the Dutch, it had turned its attention towards India. Thus, the Dutch and English rivalry was begun in the Southeast Asian islands. In the year 1608, without any disappointment, the company sent Captain William Hawkins to the court of Mughal Emperor Jahangir for trade facilities and to secure a royal patronage. Hawkins, with negotiations, could get the emperor's permission to open trade at Surat in the year 1611, but due to the Portuguese, the Mughal ruler nullified it. The efforts of Middleton and Best helped them gain emperor's permission in the year 1613, where with that permission they opened trade at Surat, Ahmedabad, Cambay and Goa. In the further progress, in the year 1615, Emperor James I of England sent Sir Thomas Roe to the same Jahangir's court with the intention of concluding a treaty of free trade between the two countries. This was an important turning point in the perspectives of the English East India Company, because the English East India Company under the Thomas Roe, he was able to get that permission in September 1618 with a public declaration by the emperor. And the emperor asked the Portuguese to cooperate for open trade. This was the new phase in the trading perspectives of the further, particularly English East India Company. The English East India Company, with that, successfully established factories at Surat, Agra, Ahmedabad, Baroda and Bhuj before Roe left India in February 1619. Later, the company enhanced and increased the trade centers. In that sequence, in the year 1668, Bombay was transferred to the company by Charles II at an annual rent of 10 euros. After the acquisition of Bombay, the company shifted its headquarters from Surat to Bombay in the year 1687. Thus, Bombay became an important center in the west coast for the Englishes. English has established successfully a factory at Machilipatnam in the southern east coast in the year 1611, which was under the Golconda Kingdom. Later, English obtained the Golden Firman with the right to trade in the kingdom of Golconda for a fixed customs duty from the Sultan in the year 1632. Besides, in the year 1633, the English established factories at Hariharpur and at Balasore in Orissa. In the year 1640, it is an important phase in the trading progress of the English East India Company. The English built a fortified factory at Madras, which came to be called as Fort St. George. After the construction of St. Fort George at Madras, it became the headquarters of the British on the Coromandel coast. In the year 1651, they established factories at Hooghly in Bengal, Patna in Bihar, Kasim Bazar in Bengal. Thus, English not only established their centers in the Bengal coast, even they obtained the royal firman to trade in Bengal from the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb in the year 1667. In the year 1700, the English factories in Bengal were placed under the separate control of a president and a council in the fortified settlement called Fort Williams at Calcutta. The English company had securely settled down at Surat, Bombay, Madras, Calcutta by the end of 17th century with continuous progress. In 1717, the company got the privilege of the trade free of tax in the provinces of Hyderabad, Bengal and Gujarat from Mughal Emperor Farrukhsiyar in return payment of 3,000 euros per annum. Thus, Englishes were successful who started their inroads on their arrival with several problems. They successfully established their trade centers, even though the Portuguese and the Dutch resented for their entry. In the beginning of the 17th century, when all these companies are in progress and quarreling among themselves superiority over the trade, another company also entered into the Indian provinces for the same purpose, that is coming of Danish, Swedish and French companies. Regarding the coming of Danish and Swedish companies, Danes came to India in 1616, but they confined to private trade only. The Danish colonies in India included the towns of Tranquebar, Serampore and Nicobar Islands. Swedish East India Company was formed in 1713. Its trade was confined to China. Another company, West India Company, was organized by the merchants of Flanders in 1722, had a brief career in India. Then came the French Company, with which the English had a long conflict. Now we may shift our discussion to coming of French and why the conflict was began between the English and the French and other companies. Regarding the French company is concerned, the French East India Company was established in 1664 under the patronage of King Louis XIV and his finance minister Colbert. The French factory was established at first in 1668 at Surat, where the principal station of the English company in India was already situated. The second factory was set up at Machilipatnam in the year 1669. Further, a factory was also developed at Chandarnagar near Bengal between 1690 and 92. Here, the two major French trading posts in India were Pondicherry and Chandarnagar, established in 1674 by Martin. They also occupied the island of Mauritius in Southeast Asian Sea. With this discussion on the coming of various European companies and their trade progress. Now we may shift our discussion on the rivalry of English and its European groups. Every European trading company decided to have monopoly of the trade in the East. In the 17th and 18th centuries, developed contests over the Eastern trade, particularly between Portuguese versus the Dutch, Portuguese versus the English, the Dutch versus the English, the French versus the English. Here, the main contender is English East India Company. Coming to the English and Portuguese rivalry, in the 16th century, Portuguese have no European rivals on the long sea route. The situation changed in the early 17th century with the arrival of Dutch and English East India Companies. In this regard, the first conflict occurred in 1611 itself, when the English East India Company sent a voyage to India under the command of Captain Hawkins. In that attempt and voyage, Captain Hawkins got the permission from the Mughal Emperor Jahangir to establish trade center at Surat. But due to the pressure brought by the Portuguese, Jahangir revoked the permission granted to the English. In this sequence, the English under the Captain Best defeated the Portuguese in 1612 at Swali near Surat, later got permission from the Emperor to trade at Surat, Ahmedabad, Cambay, Goa, and began the company's relations with India. This was the beginning. In the year 1616, Sir Thomas Roe came to India with a letter from the King of England to the Mughal Emperor. He secured a treaty from the Mughal Emperor for trading establishments, and he got that privileges. And at the same time, the English tried to minimize the image of the Portuguese in the Mughal court. In this regard, the Persians joined the English in removing the Portuguese power in the Gulf region around 1622. Since then, the Portuguese began losing their hold over the eastern seas as well as their positions in India. In their rivalry, in the year 1622, Bombay went to the King Charles II of England as dowry for marrying a Portuguese princess. Later on, Salsette and Bassein were captured by the Marathas. Hooghly was taken over by the Mughals, and both came later under the British control along with the Dutch possessions in India. The fall of Portuguese, in fact, began in 1630 when the Treaty of Madrid ended hostilities between England and Portuguese. The treaties of 1654 and 1661 further strengthened friendship between them. Their inferior position compared with the Dutch and the English led to their elimination from Indian trade. Thus, the Portuguese, who came first as a traders and who discovered the trader, they lost their superiority over the sea trade of Southeastern coast and also Indian territories. Now, with the arrival of Dutch, the English-Dutch rivalry was also began. The English determination to establish hold in the Spice Islands led to conflict between the English and the Dutch. The Treaty of 17th July 1619 that concluded between them in London allowed the English company to have only half of trade in pepper and 1/3 of finer spices in the Isles. English were also allowed to trade in Pulicat in Coromandel coast on paying half of the expenses of the garrison, and thus became partners in Indian trade. But this cooperation did not last long, as both were determined to oust each other. In their rivalry, the massacre of Ambonia was an important event. In the attack, the Dutch executed 10 Englishmen along with 9 Japanese and 1 Portuguese man on the grounds of conspiracy against their possessions in East Indies at Amboina. The Anglo-Dutch rivalry could remove Dutch from Eastern Islands and British from India. Thus, English tried to remove the Dutch at least from India. For this, it entered into a treaty with the former rival, even the Portuguese also. This made the Dutch to concentrate on the Eastern Islands than in India. With the defeat of the Dutch in the Battle of Bedra, the Dutch influence in India collapsed and the English influence began to increase. Later, Dutch company in India began to limit a country trade, and its officers began interest in private fortunes in collaboration with the office of the English East India Company. Dutch settlements at Nagaur was occupied in the year 1773. Nagapattam, others on the Coromandel coast, and Trincomalee in Ceylon were occupied by the British in the year 1782. Finally, in the year 1795, the English expelled the Dutch power from India, Cape of Good Hope, and also Ceylon, Malacca, Amboina, and Cochin. Thus, English dominated by eliminating the competition of the Dutch in their rivalry. Besides the Dutch rivalry, the English also confronted with the Portuguese after the arrival of the Portuguese. Now we may shift our discussion with the English and French rivalry and its impact. The French were bitter enemies of the English, and this rivalry was extended even to their companies. The prevailing political condition of southern India helped the European traders to aspire for political power. Hyderabad and Karnataka, the important princely states in the south, were the two large provinces of South India. The political unrest in Hyderabad and Karnataka offered the English and the French an opportunity to continue their traditional hostility. They took opposite stands and came forward to interfere in the domestic affairs of these two states because of the political rivalry and uncertainty. Because of that, 3 long battles had been fought during the period of 20 years, that is from 1744 to 63, with the aim of attaining commercial as well as political control. The rivalry between English and French, which fought in the Karnataka region, were known as Karnataka Wars. Now we can shift our discussion. Why the Karnataka Wars were occurred? What is the role of the French and Englishmen in the interference of their internal matters? What is the results of it? The first Karnataka War occurred between 1746 and 1748. Regarding the important events of that first Karnataka War, the first Karnataka War was the extension of the Anglo-French War in Europe. In that battle, the English fleet was defeated and Madras was captured by the French. To get back Madras, the English seized the French settlement in Pondicherry. Thus, the first Karnataka War came to an end with the end of hostilities in Europe. The Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle of the year 1740 brought the Austrian War of Succession to an end. Under the terms of this treaty, Madras was handed over back to the English and Pondicherry to the French. After this settlement, the second Karnataka War was also fought between these two groups in the year 1749 and 1754. The second Karnataka War was a struggle for power between various Indian claimants to obtain power in southern India, each supported by the French or the British. Both the British and the French governments disapproved the policy of their companies fighting in India. Finally, the Treaty of Pondicherry in the year 1755 with the English, both the nations agreed not to interfere in the quarrels of Indian province. Thus, the British control over the Karnataka was re-established, but peace did not last long as the English were determined to remove the French from in India. It resulted again for the Third Karnataka War. Regarding the events of the Third Karnataka War, in 1756, the 7-year war was begun between the English and the French in Europe. Taking advantage of this, the English captured Chandranagore, the important French settlement near Calcutta. English also won the Battle of Plassey by defeating the Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowla of Bengal. With that success, the English men and money moved to the south for a serious contest in the northern circles, which were then under the French. The French government sent a powerful army under the command of Count de Lally. The English settlements in northern circles were occupied by Bussy in the year 1758. Lally recalled Bussy from Hyderabad for his help. However, to make a counteract, the English sent an army from Bengal to northern circles and occupied Machilipatnam and concluded a treaty with the Nizam Salabat Singh, the ruler of Hyderabad. Thus, the Battle of Vandavash took place in Karnataka in 1760. In that battle, the French were suffered defeat and Bussy was taken prisoner. The battle sealed the fate of the French in India. Pondicherry was besieged by the English and Lally was forced to surrender in 1761. English easily captured the rest of the French cities at Mahé, Gingy, etc. The 7-year war ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1763. With this discussion, I hope that you may understand the advent of European companies, when they started, and what is the circumstances that paved the way for the discovery of trade route, the arrival of various companies, and why the rivalry was begun, the results, and how the Britishers dominated over the trade. With the coming of European companies for trade in India led to rivalry and wars were occurred among the European companies. They intervened in the internal matters of the native rulers and sometimes even the removal of native rulers from power and establishment of aligned authority. This may be the ground for the further progress of Indian history, which the English not only confined to their trade and monopoly over the territories, and later on they became political power in India. That may be discussed in the next module. For more details, you go through the e-text and other components. Thank you.